Yeah, I'm Justin. I work at JetBrains on the Scala plugin for IntelliJ. Within that, I mostly work on build tools integration. I spent a lot of time on SPT integration. Currently, I'm working on BSP, the build server protocol. But today, I'm not going to talk about that, but instead the tools of the language itself, namely the types and how these types can help you, how types in Scala can help you work with your code base, how to explore libraries, and I'll do that on the example of Zio Streams, John, and Circe, all things I don't know much about myself. So I've just played around with them so far. So my hope is people can sort of watch out and see what errors I do as much as what I do right. I don't know if this presentation has any interaction like a chat or ability to, raise your hand and talk directly. If not, we're just going to have to pretend that we're interacting. So yeah, I'm going to talk about how the types help you explore a code base with IntelliJ, with the IntelliJ plugin for Scala. Okay, there's a discourse chat, track chat. So you can just write there anytime if you have any comments. And if I notice them, then I'll try to integrate them into the talk. Right, so just gotta switch my this one. So all I have right now is this empty object type touching. And what I want to start doing is figuring out what Zio is about. So in another window, I opened the Getting Started page, and it has some examples. I'm just going to copy that in here. I'll rename this type touching. So some of the first things we see here is there's these gray underlined things, zio.urio. So one of the things that the Scala plugin helps you with is adding these type annotations virtually, even if so you don't have to write them yourself. They're gray underlaid so that you just see they are added in by the editor rather than part of the actual code. But what we can do is do a quick fix, Alt-Enter, add type annotation, and it will add one. And we see we have several options here, well, two options, zio.urio console exit code, zio.zn exit code. So the Scala plugin infers different possibilities that you can use here. The ZN, I believe, is the more general one, and the console, the more specific one. We can check the implementation here. Here we see it's the more general one, the ZN. So the Scala plugin already inferred it uses console in this case, because that's what this my app logic seems to return. Here we have another type annotation. So at this point, I don't really know what a Urio is or a Zio is. I'm guessing they're just some kind of monadic things. So looking at the my app logic, I have a nice little for comprehension, and it uses a special thing called put stir line instead of a print line. We can get a type annotation on that, or a type declaration. I'm using QuickDoc here, so just on my keyboard it's Ctrl-J, but IntelliJ supports a bunch of keyboard layouts. So here we see this returns, again, a Urio console to unit. So at this point, I'm kind of interested what the heck is a Urio. So we can, again, do a quick doc, and it gives the basic definition. A Urio minus R plus A is a ZO. It's just a type alias. We can also look at the declaration. So we have a whole bunch of such definitions. So looking at the definition of a ZO, we got a bit of documentation here. I think what it's telling us, we have the R type, could be called a resource, I suppose. The E type is the error type, maybe, and the A type is the result, if I interpret this right. Yeah, also says here in the documentation, R is environment, E is error, A is success type. So a Urio just doesn't deliver any error. You just give it a resource and it gives you a success. And put stir line has a unit success type, so I assume it always just succeeds. And it has a console resource type, so it takes this console type and presumably that is what is used to actually write to a console. Looking at get stir line, I'm using another keyboard shortcut here, which is called show type, I think. Type info. So on my keyboard, it's Shift Control P. So that just gives you the information about the type on your cursor or your selection. So this again is a ZO, and this can fail with an IO exception. So it's a more general ZO thing. And when we string this together, in the end, we have a console resource, IO exception error, and a unit success type. I'm just going to add this type annotation here. Okay, cool. So that's getting a basic idea of what the ZO thing is about. So you also see here, when I just hover, I also get this type information. So you see the definition, my app logic, and you see in small print here the type information. We also get this on other items. So we don't even need to press a keyboard shortcut. Get an instant documentation. But again, this always depends a bit on your IDE configuration. I want to have a quick look at this console thing again, and what the relation is to Zn. So this is a type of has console service. I don't quite understand that yet, but maybe we'll get back to that later. It gives me a rough idea. What is a has? Okay, it's just a class, it's serializable. So it seems this environment can be a very general type. It doesn't have to be a subtype of something specific. So the next thing I want to do is use this basic knowledge I gained and look at Zio streams. A thing I'd like, because I work with BSP, the build server protocol, that's a JSON RPC protocol. So what we definitely don't have enough in Scala is JSON parsers and so on, and JSON libraries, as I'm sure some of the people here can confirm. But what I'd like to do is create a simple client-server implementation. And I want to try to do this with Zio streams. Client-server of a JSON RPC protocol. So right now I only have this very basic setup. This is another Zio app. It defines a run. So what I want to start with is a server and construct the kind of stream of parsed JSON. So I already imported some libraries here, such as John and Circe and Zio streams. So we don't need to go through the whole importing part. So what do I actually need? I want a Zio stream, and I looked this up. It's a Z stream. So I just type that and oh, I do have this. Yes. I just expected IntelliJ to actually offer me the import here, but for some reason I was wrong. So I'll just look at that later, why it wasn't doing that. Okay, so I want to construct a Zio stream from an input stream, first of all. For now, I'll just use system.in. So I can get the types of the parameters that it takes. So you'll see here, IS, it takes an input stream, lazily by name evaluated, and a chunk size, which is optional. So yeah, I'm just giving it the input stream. And now we see here another nice little type feature. We see that the return type of this method of whatever I typed here does not match the declared return type. So the ZStream from input stream gives us a ZStream object, but the method, the run method, expects a URIO. I forgot what URIO even stands for. So at some point we need to transform this. We saw before there's this exit code method, but let's have a quick look what kinds of things methods there are. So I just do a dot and it gives us, well, this might be outside of your screen. Okay, so on the right side here we see the return types. Usually I have this a little wider so that you can actually read the parameter types and the return types well. So some of these return a ZO. So now I'm going to try something. So what I did now, I pressed Shift Control Space, that's SmartCompletion. And that tries to give you completions that actually match the expected type. So, and indeed, we now get a bunch that actually return a ZO. So this is very similar to what you may know from Haskell called type tolls. This doesn't just work with dot completion, but also in parameters. Let's try if it actually works here. I press Shift Control Space, and I do get some completions that fit in here. Unsafe run, unsafe task. But in this case, they're very generic. They're just this value of, which gives you a T, which will always be in this list of completions. Unfortunately, it didn't give us the system in, but maybe if I help it a little, I type system dot and press Shift Control Space, and it completed the in because it was the only possible option. So yeah, keep in mind the smart completion. If there's values in your scope that help you, that will fit into a certain typed hole, into a certain position, then it will just suggest those values. Actually, I'm going to try this with something else because eventually instead of system in, I want to use server socket. So I'll just write this down. Is new server socket. And let's see if smart completion can help me again. So not yet, unfortunately. So it's not yet able to complete whole expressions because that's a bit more of an involved machination. But maybe if I do this, boom, Shift Control Space, and it automatically added the only option, which was socket get input stream. But for now, I'll leave it with system.in. Oops, I switched to Russian there. So what do I actually want to do with this system in with the stream? So ideally, I'd like to parse as much of the stream as necessary to get a single JSON. So turn it from a stream of bytes into a stream of JSONs. So thinking about this in types, some of the things that come to mind is we could try to fold these bytes into a JSON, or we can just try to map them. So having a look at what we have here in terms of map. So here's a plain old map method from byte to whatever. I'm not sure that's what we want yet. There's this interesting thing called map chunks m. So the concept of chunks in Zio, I think, is a kind of optimization. So instead of working with individual bytes that come through a stream or individual objects, you work on whole chunks of bytes. So this takes a function of a chunk of bytes and it returns a Zio. You have map m, which does the same, it just takes a single byte and returns a Zio. So I'm just going to try if the map method on its own is good enough. So I looked this up already. I'm using John. I'm going to use John to parse these JSONs. So what I'm gonna get is create as a parser, JParser. And that has different modes. So I already looked this up, so I'm going to use Async. And here I'm going to use SmartCompletion again to see what options we have, because this just takes async parser mode, which is enum or something like it. So we conveniently get a bunch of completions that include the possible values. We also get these kind of useless ones that you saw before for unsafe run task value of, but we get the actually useful ones as well. So value string, single value, unwrap array. And I just press Ctrl J and I'll get the quick doc again. Okay, in this case, it's not really documented. So I'm just going to tell you the value stream is the one we want. We want a stream of JSON values. So let's see. I'll try parser dot. It has a bunch of methods. And okay, this has absorb. So again, I'll look at QuickDoc. It turns out not to be useful. It's not documented in the Scala doc, but that's okay. So all of these will give us a sequence of, sequence of J values, as you see in the type completion once I make it fit the window. There we go. parse exception to seek of j value. So apparently these don't take single bytes, they take strings or byte buffers or byte arrays. So instead of map, I'll see if we can get a byte array. And so map chunks seems to, well, it gives us chunks. I'll call this chunk. We can check the type that it's here actually. Yeah, it's a chunk of bytes. And so a chunk is not an array, but there is a to-array version, and the completion is smart enough on its own that it immediately offers the to-array in the beginning. But if that's not the case, I can still do Shift-Control-Space, and it offers more tightly relevant ones. So yeah, we want this parse to-array. And now I'm already a bit confused. What type is this expression? So I'll just press type info, Shift-Control-P, and it says it's either parse exception to seek j value. So that's not quite what we want yet. If we look at the type again of map chunks m, it expects a function that gives a zio, but what we have is a either. So let's look for utility methods that help us out here in zio. I'll just type either, and indeed there's something that gives us from either. Let's see if there's a type way we can find this. So if I just do the general completion, I get this whole long list of stuff. So in theory, we could also just pick the one that has the right type, or the right parameter type. But that's maybe helpful, but with all these things, names actually matter a bit in exploring it. So just type either, and I will just copy this in here. So what's this now? We still get a type error, as you see down here. So we need a function chunk of byte to IO, but to zio that gives chunks again, but we have seeks. So then again, looking at this, yeah, it's a type IO seek j value. And we need to turn this into chunks. But that should be easy enough. So we just need to map a seek to a chunk. So again, map. And I look this up, of course, and just type chunk dot, and conveniently it already figures out the right one. Get it from iterable. Yeah, I tried the smart completion here to reduce the choices. There's another thing we want, but really we want from iterable to chunk. So it auto-completed this with the underscore parameter syntax for some reason, but then IntelliJ already recognizes we don't need the placeholder in this place. We can just use chunk from iterable. Okay. So looking at this, by the way, did you notice we get this nice type mismatch method here that tries to align types, so it doesn't just give you a big string, it gives you the outer type, the URIO, ZStream aligned, so it requires a URIO but found a ZStream. It requires the parameter Z and exit code but found blocking exception J value. So the types still don't line up quite, but I think we can fix that. So I'm going to do another selection just to be sure what we're getting here. Yeah, we have a Z stream. We need a URIO. So let's see. I'll try SmartCompletion again and see if that helps us. So it offers these functions: run, fold m, fold while m. Not entirely sure these are what we need, because when I did this last time, I used for each. So I think the SmartCompletion, it's fairly smart, but it's not complete, because the for each also gives us a type that we want in the end. And what I want to do right now in this server, I just have this JS, and I want to print it. That's all. So I'm going to use the ZIO function putStir. I need to import it, I realized. Gives us the toString function right at the top. Boom. So yeah, SmartCompletion, I guess, didn't suggest the for each because it's not ready yet. But now what you see, we've chained a few of these method calls from input stream, mac chunks n, for each. And on the right side, now we see more TypeIns. So the Scala plugin or IntelliJ will give you TypeIns for each step of chained method call. So you don't even need to press buttons. You see we're going from a ZStream blocking IO exception byte to a ZStream blocking exception J value to a ZIO console exception unit. Now I suppose we're almost there. Looking at the types, we just need an exit code. So maybe SmartCompletion can help us. Yes, I press Shift Control Space and I get that exit code. Great, cool. So this will compile. It's maybe not complete yet, but we've got something that compiles. Okay, I think I have about 5 minutes. That's not quite enough to write a full client and run it, but okay, I noticed I've been talking and there were some comments. Okay, nothing I can, but were there any actual questions among these comments? Okay, can't quite tell. But I'll just start out start out writing a client, and maybe we see a few minor features still. Check, they call it client is what I wanted. Have IntelliJ implement this method for me. So similarly here, I'll create a new Java socket. Look at the parameter lists again. I just need to 51. So I'm going to make this a bit quicker. Just refer to my notes. So we can use ZStream again. And what we want is to have some input-output loop, kind of a REPL that communicates with the server. So I know that this method repeat effect is useful here. And just put the stir line. And I just want to do this little REPL arrow, and for each of those that I print, I write I get stir line. So looking at the types again, I have a ZO console IO exception string. Okay. I prepared a few things so I can just write this in here. I prepared a utility function that creates a JSON RPC request. Simple notification. You can see this just turns a string into a JSON RPC notification. That's type I defined before. It's just a very simple abstract data type for generic JSON RPC messages. I want to turn this ADT into actual JSON. I happen to know the method is called as JSON. This is implicit provided by Circe. So right now it's not recognized, but luckily IntelliJ Scala plugin can now recognize that there's an implicit missing somewhere. By the way, if you didn't know, there's this nice feature for showing implicit. The implicit hints. Control Alt Shift. Yes. Okay, it's not showing right now, but anyway, I can press Alt Enter and it will find implicits that match this. So in this case, encoder ops, and I expanded the implicit hints. So now it tells you the whole implicit that is used at this point to convert this into JSON. Oh, there we go. So this hint is so long that it messes up all the other hints. But maybe you get the idea. So I'll reduce this a bit. So it still tells me there's an ambiguous implicit. So I can import another implicit, and there's various ones. So if I was using Circe manually here, I just import IO Circe generic auto. IntelliJ instead finds all the possible implicits that can be used here. So most of these I don't know exactly what they do, but so I'm just going to use the auto export encoder. So now it's a little cleaner, but you still see encoder ops, here, the implicit conversion or wrapping, and then the implicit parameter imported encoder. So yeah, thanks to the Scala's type system, the IDE can even help you with finding the right conversions and so on. I'm gonna unexpand this a bit to clean it up a bit. So for each, and I'm just writing this out since I'm a bit over time. I'm using Zio effect to get a task, which is a Zio thing. So get output stream, write JSON. We can format it some ways here. And I suppose I want looking at the argument takes, this takes an array of bytes, and using completion again, it will give us a get bytes method conveniently. And now all that's missing, completion again, dot exit code. Okay, this may or may not run at this point. I think my time is up. But I'm right here in the channel for further questions, comments. I will try to run this in the meantime. See if it runs at all. Wait, I want to use socket dot. Some very run server. Okay, it's not quite running yet. I might just have a small bug in there. But if you have any interest in this, please just contact me. And If you would like to get it to work together with me, let me know. I promise I did have it working before, but live coding, something always goes wrong. So you can find me on Twitter as Ebenwert. And
ジャスティンさん、どうもありがとうございました。はい、ぜひ皆さん質問、感想等、投稿してください。それでは、このセッション、ご視聴いただきありがとうございました。皆さん大きな拍手をお願いいたします。